Welcome in and happy Thanksgiving to you that are watching right now. We appreciate y'all being dialed in. A lot of college football that is probably about to be played at the time of you watching this, maybe even in a few hours. In a couple of minutes, we got the Egg Bowl going down here today on Thanksgiving Day. We got Rivalry weekend about to be upon us in full force. We're so glad to have you here. This is the Hard Count, People's College Football Show, talking college football and only college football every single day of the year, including this day, Thanksgiving Day. A lot of people said, I don't know if they're going to have a show. A lot of shows that are kind of taking the day off or doing a best of series or maybe just no show period. Like, not us. Not us. No shade to those shows that don't. We choose to talk college football today. So we're glad to have you all a part of this. About to get into some turkey. Maybe you already got into some turkey. We got a lot to get into ourselves here. We actually have the man, the myth, the legend, one of the GOATs in this space that works here for On 3, Andy Staples, brought him on to do some rivalry superlatives, if you will. Talking about rivalries with the most hatred. I think you kind of already have a pretty good gauge for which rivalry that may be. Talking about rivalries maybe that are a little bit sneaky. Doesn't have the same brand power that some other rivalries have, but still a rivalry worth watching, and the result obviously could surprise you a little bit by nature of it being sneaky. Speaking of the result, most impactful rivalries, we'll talk about that. Really great segment with Andy, a great conversation. It was a pleasure to talk some ball with the man, the myth, the legend. Also, speaking of myths, legends, and men, we got Jake Olson from USC. The long snapper was the first Division I blind football player in history, snapped against Western Michigan. I believe he also snapped against Oregon State. Motivational speaker, author, dude is the man, someone I'm very, very proud to call a close friend of mine. He came on the show, and we just talked about what's going on at USC. Because Jake, being an alum, he's so close to that situation, closer than anybody else in the country, or at least has a unique perspective than anyone else in the country would have. So we talked to Jake about where things stand with USC. Is the Lincoln Riley criticism fair? What does it take to succeed there? Really interesting spot for USC and a really interesting conversation. So we appreciate Jake joining the party, as he always does. Now, every single Thursday, we've done it the entirety of the season. We're not stopping right now. Our final thoughts on what will potentially happen when it comes to this rivalry Saturday. Got some predictions for you there. And excited to jump into that with y'all. Appreciate you being dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a minute of what we got going on right here on the On3 YouTube channel, on this show, The Hard Count. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're thankful for y'all. I usually say that at the end of a segment, end of a show. I want to lead it with this show because it's Thanksgiving. You have a lot you could be doing, a lot that y'all probably are doing right now, but you're making time to get in here with us, talk some ball, and have a good time and celebrate this day. So we're thankful for y'all, and we cannot stress that enough. So let's get into it. We got some upsets to talk about, y'all. Yes, it's Thanksgiving. Yes, the vibes are high, but when it comes to rivalry weekend, weird things happen. You can't really have the same logic you would have on a previous college football weekend. Rivalry weekend, a special lens we got to put to this thing. So what is the forecast when it comes to upsets this upcoming weekend? I'm not predicting upsets, but I am telling you, keep an eye on these potential matchups, and don't be surprised if they're a little bit closer in the fourth quarter than maybe some experts would have projected. And the first one is Oregon State at Oregon. Oregon State, a 13.5-point dog. That line itself is surprising after the way that Oregon State just played Washington to a 2-point loss. A lot of talent on that Oregon State football team. Silas Bolden getting after it in the slot. DJ Uiagalelei, I think, is quietly one of the better quarterbacks in that conference. They know who they are. They have a strong identity about themselves. And with this game itself, there is so much extra emotion based on the circumstance. Yes, it's a rivalry game. Yes, it's a battle for the state. No, these teams don't like each other. But Oregon, they're leaving for the Big Ten next year. They are one of the halves when it comes to college football. Now, Oregon State, when it came to the realignment of musical chairs, they were left without a chair when the music stopped. Still unsure what that's going to look like for the good folks in Corvallis. So can you imagine how sweet it would be for this Oregon State team to, one, knock Oregon out of the college football playoff race, two, knock them out of the Pac-12 title race, and three, send them with an L and maybe never play them again? Now, I'm hoping and I'm praying and flash optimistic that we do see this rivalry in the future, but I'm just saying, right now, there is no next date for these two. So with the emotion baked into it, with the balance that Oregon State will try to create here, starting up front, running the football, and then some play action, I think there's a path here. Now, we already gave our prediction on this game, so go and check that out if you haven't already, but just keep an eye on this one. I think it could be a little bit tricky, and the rivalry will be a lot of rivalry juice. We'll just leave it at that. Next game to watch here, the Governor's Cup. Kentucky at Louisville. Kentucky's a 6.5-point dog going to Louisville. Now, Louisville, to be honest with everybody, like they've looked very human at different times this season. The game against Virginia, they didn't look that great. A little bit of weeknight magic, maybe. The game against Miami. Miami is a better football team than most people would like to admit, but looked kind of lackluster at times there. Now, Kentucky is limping into this game. Had a loss to South Carolina. You know, they're down bad. But what I would say about Kentucky, and I said this with Andy Staples in our conversation, there's several teams in college football that are what I like to call, endearingly rather, cockroach teams. And what I mean by that is you can beat them over the head with the rolling pin. You can try and put them in a trash compactor. You can try and wear them out for 4 quarters. But this teams like this, will not die. I'm talking about Kansas State. I'm talking about Iowa. I'm talking about Iowa State. And I'm talking about Kentucky. This Mark Stoops coach football team, it doesn't matter if they lost every game leading up to this one. They will play with passion. They will play for their head coach. And they will be a tough out, regardless of what the score is. So, with the way that this thing is shaping up, if they could knock Louisville to a 2-loss team, promise you they would be just fine doing that, going on the road and getting that done for Kentucky. So watch that one. Upset forecast alert for sure in a Governor's Cup. Alabama at Auburn. A little Iron Bowl action, huh? This one's going to be a lot of fun. Now, the best way to talk about this one is something weird just happens. Like, it's nothing novel when I say that. It's hard to quantify exactly what weird will look like. Alabama's a 15-point favorite going to Jordan-Hare. But here's the thing. Brian Harsin almost beat Bryce Young. Think about the way that both of those individuals' careers diverged after that game. Brian Harsin, obviously no longer the head coach at Auburn. Bryce Young went on to be the number 1 NFL draft pick. I'm just saying, if we can live in a world like that where those two are going toe-to-toe, the spread means nothing to me. The spread means nothing to me, especially when it's at Auburn. So I don't have any tremendous analysis besides Auburn's going to be aggressive. They're going to attack Jalen Milroe. We've seen Jalen Milroe have the turnover bug before. He's playing really well right now. But keep an eye on that one when it comes to a little bit of weirdness going on in that game, as there always is. Now, last one for you. You got Arkansas. A 7.5-point underdog at the crib against Missouri. Battle line rivalry. And this is one that I think you see your team really lay it on the line for Sam Pittman. They said he's coming back. We're keeping him as our head coach at Arkansas. You love that. So some emotion baked in there. How much is in the tank if you're Missouri? Because you had a huge win over Tennessee. Vibes were immaculate. And then you play Florida at home and you need a 4th and 17 to convert and win the game. How much do you have left emotionally? I'm not saying that they don't have anything left. I'm saying it's a very valid question to wonder where this team is at when it comes to the juice that they have to get up for a game like this. Because Arkansas, I'm telling you, they got some morale magic, if you will, for the good folks over there with the Razorbacks. So keep an eye on that one. I think that one's going to be interesting, and I think that the spot for that one for Missouri is really, really fascinating. So that's the upset forecast for this upcoming weekend. Keep an eye on that one now. Going to be a lot of fun, and keep an eye on this slate, rather, rivalry weekend. This is one to really, really watch when it comes to these upsets for this Saturday slate. All right, now let's make a little pivot here, staying in the vein of rivalries, as is, rivalry weekend that we're in right now. Got to sit down with Andy Staples, talk a little bit of ball, talk a little bit about some of our rivalry superlatives, if you will, when it comes to this rivalry weekend. And Andy and I broke down most impactful, most hatred, sneakiest, most chance to get weird, all that. So with that being said, here is the man, the myth, the legend, Andy Staples. It is rivalry weekend. Like, if you had to embody rivalry weekend, I mean, it is what embodies college football in my mind. And to break it all down, some rivalry weekend superlatives, if you will, for your Thanksgiving. The man, the myth, the legend, Andy Staples. Andy, Turkey Day, things get weird during college football season. They get the weirdest on rivalry weekend. Figured we kind of break down rather some of our superlatives. First things first, happy Thanksgiving. How you doing?
Doing good. Ready to eat. Ready to make a little mac and cheese. Little mashed potatoes and gravy, little turkey. This is the best holiday of the year because it is all about the food.
And you get football right on top of it. So a nice little pairing there. I mean, let's start here though, Andy. Let's go with the sneakiest rivalry game of this slate. I know Mississippi State's about to play here in a few hours. What is your pick here for the sneakiest?
Oh, it's the Egg Bowl, because how many times has a game been determined by a player pretending to pee like a dog on the goalpost because he is doing it as an homage to another player from his school who pretended to pee like a dog on the goalpost.
It's just good fun. Just good, clean fun. A lot of camouflage you would expect on both sides of that when it comes to the crowd.
So
I think
a lot of real
a
tree
good camo showing.
A lot of real tree. We won't see many people in the stands because they will be camouflaged. Now it is going to be. This one's a tricky one because you got Mississippi State with an interim coach with Greg Knox. Now we saw Greg Knox with the four-wheeler in the locker room before the Southern Miss game, I talked about this on my show. So Greg Knox trying to make a run at Ed Orgeron as greatest interim coach of all time. Because right now, if I fired my coach, I would bring in Coach O for the last 2 or 3 games of the season and just let him have fun and do his thing because he's the greatest interim coach who ever lived. But Greg Knox, who is now 2-0 as an interim coach, is winning against Florida State as Florida's interim coach, Southern Miss as Mississippi State's interim coach. If he could pull off the Egg Bowl win, then he becomes on that same level as Coach O. Like, if you fire your coach, you just call up Greg Knox and be like, Greg, you and your four-wheeler, get it in the locker room right now.
Put him on the shoulders, carry him off, give him a king's exit. Like, no, I'm with you. That's one that's going to be, I mean, especially with Lane Kiffin being a part of that matchup too, it should have a fair amount of just weirdness to it to go along with the sneakiness. My sneakiest matchup here, Andy, how about the Governor's Cup? You got Kentucky going to Louisville. Kentucky, to me, is one of those teams that I call like cockroach teams. Like, there's some teams that are just impossible to kill. And that's Iowa, it's Iowa State, I think it's Kansas State. Like, every single year they're the same. Kentucky, with Mark Stoops running the show, is one of those teams to me. And with Louisville, with all they have to play for, and we're talking about the ACC title game, and then like you're even floating the college football playoff around with Louisville, it would be so college football for Kentucky to find a way to win that game on the road. Very, very sneaky to me. What do you think?
Kentucky has won this game 4 times in a row. It's not been particularly close of late. Now, I think Jeff Brom changes the math on this thing. But I will say this. If we look at it this way, I know Louisville theoretically has a chance to still make the college football playoff, but there would have to be a lot of chaos because Louisville has by far the worst loss of any one-loss team. They lost to Pitt, which, we know why it happened because it was right after that Notre Dame game. But when you put it up against everybody else, you're like, we can't put a team that lost to Pitt in the playoff. So if you're Louisville, if we really think about this, you get a lot more out of beating Florida State than you do out of beating Kentucky. So if you're going to concentrate your energy on one thing, it's beating Florida State next week because that wins you an ACC title. So that I would say don't be shocked if Louisville's looking ahead a little bit. And this is a team that it's not used to winning yet. They're not used to being here. So it's a little bit different situation. It's the same reason they lost to Pitt. They're not used to this. And so I think if you've been successful for a while, you know how to compartmentalize all that stuff. You're ready for this game. But in this case, I don't know how ready they're going to be. I know they would like to turn this rivalry around, but I think they'd probably rather win the ACC title if you're picking one or the other. So, this is one where I think there's definitely room for a little weirdness here. I think Louisville should win this. I think they should get on the right side of this thing. But if they lose this and still beat Florida State, they're not going to be thinking about whether they lost this or not.
Yeah, and if Jack Plummer can take care of the football, which is a little bit easier said than done for him this season, things could be headed the right direction headed into the ACC title game. Let's talk about some hatred. I know it's Thanksgiving, and it's a good feeling, a good vibes kind of holiday, but with it being rivalry week, and hatred is just an inevitable part of this whole thing. What is the rivalry that you're watching this weekend, Andy, that has maybe the most hatred?
Well, the Egg Bowl and the Territorial Cup, Arizona State, tend to be the sneaky, nastiest rivalries where they just hate each other. But I don't think there's any question what it is this year. It's Michigan, Ohio State. And I realize we'll probably use this for several different answers. But what has gone on between those two schools, the accusations being lobbed, because remember, the Michigan people are convinced that Ohio State turned them in, that Ohio State funded some sort of like surreptitious op to find all this stuff. So they are convinced of all this stuff, both sides. Ohio State is convinced that every single rumor about Michigan is true. And they are just going to be at each other's throats. Their fans will be at each other's throats, and the teams will be at each other's throats, and then you add the stakes of the game. But this is especially nasty this year
Yeah, Andy, and I mean, to mention what Ryan Day said when fake Lou Holtz was talking about him. Now you got a real head coach last year saying that he was born on third base when he thinks he hit a triple, and like I promise you, everybody in Columbus remembers that, and that's why we're 100% in lockstep here. Like all of the off-the-field factors baked into what was already arguably the most intense rivalry in college football just make this thing, 10x more interesting. I'm going to go ahead and throw one more in here because I figured you and I would probably agree on this because this feels like the clear runaway most hatred. Kind of sneakier on the hatred side of things, but I grew up around Georgia Tech, and like year round, it's probably not competitive right now, obviously, but like the clean old fashioned hate, which is the name of that game, Georgia Tech would love nothing more than to somehow, some way, New Mexico State this whole thing and shock Georgia on Thanksgiving. So there's a lot of hate baked into that one.
It tells you how far apart those programs are that you just said Georgia Tech would have to New Mexico State this thing.
Yep.
Like they are so far apart. But yes, it would be the biggest upset of the season if it happened. And I think Brent Key's done a really good job in year one. Haynes King has been very good for Georgia Tech, but I think Georgia's going to roll in that one. The one I think there'll be some hatred and some nastiness potentially is Oregon State.
Yep.
I think that's going to continue. I think they're going to figure out a way to keep playing that thing. But there is now even more vitriol because of what happened in the offseason with realignment. Plus, you have the stakes of this game. Plus, you have how Oregon State won it last year, just running the ball down Oregon's throat. Like, there will be teams trying to make a point.
Yeah, without question. And not just with Oregon leaving for the Big Ten, with Oregon State kind of being one of the two odd men out of this whole thing. I mean, I'm sure they would love, like you said, the stakes of it. The spoiler spot for Oregon State would just be so sweet if they could find a way to get it done for the good folks in Corvallis. How about this one? Potential to get the weirdest when it comes to this rivalry slate. We know things get weird every single rivalry weekend. What's one that you're watching with the weird factor here?
So Friday night, Oregon State definitely could get weird because I think people forget that Oregon has to win this one. Like if Oregon loses to Oregon State and Arizona beats Arizona State, which is pretty likely according to Vegas, then Arizona would go to the Pac-12 title game. So this is one that there's more to it than I think what everybody believes. And again, you go back to the way that game ended last year with Oregon State just running all over Oregon. Now, I think Oregon rebuilt their defense to make sure that isn't going to happen this time. But I also think Oregon State probably looks at how the Washington game ended, where for whatever reason, I don't know why Oregon State tried to be Washington on that last drive. They didn't need to be. They had 5 minutes and needed to get a field goal. Like, run your offense. You were running all over them. Why are you all of a sudden thinking that DJ Uiagalelei is Michael Penix Jr.? Like, so given an entire game to maybe correct that mistake, I think they try to do that to Oregon. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it this year because Oregon's defense is so much better than it was last year. But that's one where if they can get rolling, then that could be a very competitive game. I was very surprised when that spread came out. It was 13.5. It felt really big because I think Oregon State's better than that.
Yeah, 2 scores. I think like you said, 13.5, 2 scores for how closely Oregon State played Washington the week before, too, feels a little bit weird. Talking about weird spreads, Nebraska, Iowa, the Heroes game. Yes. Nebraska opened as an underdog, and now they're favored by 2 points. And I mean, to be talking about spreads is perfect for Thanksgiving because we got a lot of people, I'm sure, that watched this show that fed their families this whole season based on Iowa unders. And so with just the way
you saw the total, right?
It's perfect. It's so perfect.
27.5.
Unreal.
It's incredible.
Unbelievable in every sense. And Matt Rule and company trying to make a bowl game. They're at home. Like just everything that goes into this game, from the line itself to the under to the punch to the field position to the flux that Iowa has been in as an offensive staff, and they're still going to the Big Ten title game. Like this to me screams weird. Andy, what do you think?
Well, and how about Chubba Purdy emerging as Nebraska's quarterback? Does he give them a more dynamic look than Jeff Sims or Heinrich Haarberg did? It's hard to say, but it does feel like they feel pretty confident with him. No Cooper DeJean for Iowa. Now, they didn't have him against Illinois either, but does that make it tougher for their defense? And remember, this game was weird last year. Iowa, which had a chance to clinch the Big Ten West last year, went and spit the bit against Nebraska and an interim coach. So I wouldn't be shocked if this is weird again. Like this, if it goes over, I mean, you just need a 15-13 game to go over. Like the game Iowa played last week would send it over. But Nebraska winning this game because they need it for bowl eligibility and Iowa doesn't need it for anything wouldn't shock me one bit.
That's why we love the games. Why we love the games. Last one for you here, Andy. Talking about the most impactful rivalry of the weekend. You mentioned Nebraska-Iowa. Obviously a pretty big impact there for Nebraska. Is there one that you're watching here specifically outside of the game itself with Ohio State-Michigan? That's obviously the most impactful. Outside of that, though, what's the most impactful rivalry you're looking at?
Well, you got the Iron Bowl still. We have not mentioned the Iron Bowl yet. And I realize Auburn just lost to New Mexico State, but I think back to 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Alabama goes into the Iron Bowl. That's that first Brian Harsin Auburn team. They took them to 4 overtimes. The same Alabama team that the next week beat the snot out of eventual national champion Georgia in the SEC championship game. Weird things happen in that game. Weird things happen at Jordan-Hare in that game. So as strange as last week was, where New Mexico State put the hammer down on Auburn, I wouldn't be shocked if Auburn keeps this close at least for a little while.
Can you imagine if we get Alabama rolling into Atlanta with 2 losses and they're
playing
Georgia? It would be. I mean, it would be just. I don't know what the word would be for it, but it would be ridiculous in every sense. And like you said, Brian Harsin played Bryce Young extremely close, and those two obviously have very different legacies going forward. That was one I almost put down as a weird one.
4.
It's a lot of overtimes. The kids are in bed at that point. You got 4 overtimes. How about Florida State, Florida? Little sunshine showdown. Mm-hmm. Obviously, for Florida State, if you drop that game, you're not out of the playoff race. That'd be a pretty ugly mark on the resume, you would have to believe, losing to Florida, who's trying to make a bowl game right now. But for Florida, if they beat Florida State, who's been the big dog in the state, I mean, over the last year and a half or so, I'm thinking like Billy Napier approval rating. I'm thinking packaging that up and taking it on the recruiting trail where they've already been pretty solid. Like, I think this could kind of be the moment for Billy Napier with 2 backup quarterbacks where things could get very, very interesting, and obviously has a high impact for Florida State, for Florida even more so on the recruiting trail.
He needs it bad. Billy Napier needs this kind of W bad. The fallout from the Missouri game actually surprised me a little bit. I thought people would be madder after the LSU game. It felt like they were more resigned to what happened in the LSU game. The Missouri game pissed everybody off even more, which I actually thought Florida put up a nice fight against Missouri. I didn't expect them to win the game, but then when you give up 4th and 17 with the game on the line, that's pretty unforgivable. So I think Billy Napier needs this win bad. I think he's going to have to revamp his staff in the offseason no matter what happens in this game, but a win would help a lot. Meanwhile, Mike Norvell, take away the immediate stuff. You want to stay undefeated. You want to compete for the college football playoff. They want to step on Florida and Miami's throats in recruiting. This is their chance to do that. Win this game. One game doesn't decide a recruiting class, doesn't usually make a recruit's decision for him. But the more of these you can stack, the better off you are in terms of getting the high school guys in the most talented state in America. So that one's big for them. But obviously, the obvious part. Now, you go to the college football playoff piece of it. I don't know exactly how it's going to all shake out. I think a 13-0 Florida State will get in. I don't see a scenario where they get left out. The only way is if they really struggled against Florida and Louisville and still won. But this gives Tate Rodemaker a chance to have 2 games where the committee can watch him play and say, okay, we think they are still as good as they were with Jordan Travis, or they're not as good as they were with Jordan Travis, or, and I don't think this will happen, but who knows, better than they were with Jordan Travis. Like, he has those 2 games to let them see that. And it's very similar to what Cardale Jones had with the Big Ten championship game in 2014. Now, he only got the 1 game because JT Barrett got hurt in the Michigan game. Tate Rodemaker has 2 games to do this. This will be the first time we've ever seen Tate Rodemaker coming off a week of practice with the ones. The only other time we've seen him play when it really mattered was last week against North Alabama and last year when he had to go in for Travis against Louisville and did lead them to a win. So I don't know what to expect from him. And I will say, when you get to play Florida's defense and you have those receivers, you got a chance to break yourself in pretty well.
Yeah, a chance to run the football, it feels like, for Florida State. Like being able to take the pressure off your young quarterback, let him turn around and hand the ball off, get some play action. Yeah, I think it sets up nicely for Rodemaker, but obviously will have a massive impact for both sides. Andy, I appreciate you making time, man. What do we got for Thanksgiving? We got any dishes that we're particularly excited about? You mentioned mac and cheese. Like we have a go-to here?
So I make the mac and cheese. I have not been able to take over the full hosting for my mother-in-law. I don't think that's going to happen. She's a great hostess, so I have no right to claim that. But I always make the mac and cheese. We bring a secondary turkey or the ham. The mac and cheese is a recipe I stole from a restaurant in Michigan called Clarkston Union. So Clarkston is extreme northern Detroit suburbs above Pontiac, where the Lions used to play. And they have Clarkston Union, and their sister restaurant is Union Woodshop, which is a barbecue place. They make the best mac and cheese on earth. And some intrepid person copied that recipe and put it on the internet. I've been making it for years, and it every time is a massive hit. So you can find that recipe on the internet. It takes a little practice, but once you get it down, it's just getting devoured every time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to connect off the air about that one. I have to get that recipe so I can bring my A game to these cooking competitions during Thanksgiving. Andy, appreciate you so much. Happy Thanksgiving and enjoy Rivalry weekend. Phenomenal stuff as always from Andy Staples. If you haven't yet listened to his podcast or watched him on the On3 YouTube channel, would encourage you to do that. Episodes nearly every single day. Make sure you're dialed in. He's going to keep you in the know for all things college football across the landscape. Coaching searches, analysis, game picks. Tremendous show. Again, Andy Staples on 3 podcast and on this show, or on this platform rather, on this show sometimes, on the On3 YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed. So moving from one conversation to another, an individual that I'm extremely grateful for. Someone that I've known since I was in high school. When we met each other in men's choir our freshman year, and just an all-around incredible individual, played football at USC. Wanted to get his thoughts on the situation we got going on right now at USC. A lot of chatter around Lincoln Riley, a lot of chatter around where USC is as a program. So without further ado, here's that man, Jake Olson. Joining us now, a mountain of a man who was the first Division I football player to be legally blind, playing a game, USC alum, author, scratch golfer. Like we could do a whole laundry list of what this dude has accomplished, but right now bringing him onto the show, Jake Olson. Jake, first of all, how we feeling, man? Happy Thanksgiving. The folks are watching this on Thanksgiving. How are vibes right now for you?
Happy Thanksgiving. Well, JD, should we introduce them to and maybe even invite any of your
why not? How about you explain it?
Yeah, so for those who want to get on JD's level, really it's JD's level because he introduced it to me. So we go ahead and weigh ourselves right as you get up before you put a drop of water, juice, or whatever you drink, whiskey in the morning, whatever it is, right? And you weigh yourself. You get that raw number. And then at nighttime, after you've stuffed yourself with everything you can look at and more, you're going to get a second number. And the largest differential is the winner. So I think JD's like 6 years running here. He like cuts for this thing. He's like a pride fighter. He's like
a lot of Martinelli's at the end there, man, to kind of cork the bat a little bit. But I mean, regardless, I'm excited to see where we fall this year, man. How are we feeling about what's going on with USC? Because there's so much talk around just the way that this year unfolded, and there's so much speculation around Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams. Like, you are so close to this, closer than anybody else. What is your overall pulse on where things stand with USC right now, brother?
Yeah, well, clearly very disappointing, and I think a lot of people are scratching their head wondering what has happened. I think from everyone outside of J.K. McKay Center, where the team are asking themselves, hey, did we make the right decision? I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, that's what they're asking themselves. We gave this guy 10 year, over $100 million contract. Let's actually figure out if that's worth it. So it's going to be it's going to be interesting to come to see the changes that are necessary if those changes are made. Obviously, Grinch is gone, but who's going to be the next defensive coordinator? Is that coordinator going to be someone that is allowed to kind of really run the defense like they had wherever we get him from? Or is it going to be defense and particular special teams, which, is close to my heart, are those two sides of the ball still going to kind of be a little absent from focus in Lincoln's mind. So there's definitely things that could be, made, decisions that could be made from Lincoln's standpoint that could really put a lot of confidence in to next year. And he's going to have to do that. I mean, again, people are really questioning. So nothing's beyond, nothing's beyond saving. Nothing's happened that's, hey, this is just beyond even, trying anymore. Like that, it's not that bad. But I tell you, another 7-5 year, it could get there fast, especially in LA, and everyone knows that.
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking yesterday, like the brand of USC is so sacred and carries so much weight. I mean, especially on the West Coast, and that's really been like the West Coast team for the longest time. And now to see it kind of have the year it had last year with expectations so high, obviously a ton of criticism. Where do you fall in the criticism with Lincoln Riley? Because I think there's one thought that, hey, he's an offensive guy. The defense was the problem. We're making changes on the defensive side. Like, it's not on Lincoln Riley. There's probably another train of thought saying, well, hey, if the company's failing, it doesn't matter what department's failing. The CEO is taking the brunt of the blame there. Who's responsible for that? Where do you fall when it comes to all the chatter and the criticism on Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, well, that's, and you said it. I mean, it's valid and it's warranted. I mean, to take a head coaching position, that's what it comes with. You're no longer just an offensive guy, a coordinator or carrying out the offense. You all of a sudden have responsibilities on special teams, defense, offense, recruiting, making sure things are running correctly, answering questions at media days, giving injury reports. All that stuff comes with being a head coach. And in college, now it's talking about meeting donors and raising money and NIL stuff. Like all that stuff comes with being a head coach. So if you want that job and if you want that role, that's what it comes with. If you don't enjoy that stuff, if you don't enjoy, worrying about defense or special teams, if you don't enjoy giving injury reports, if you don't enjoy having to, glad hand donors or deal with the media, then, I mean, no fault. I mean, I don't know if I would enjoy that, but I'm not also wanting to be a head coach. So it comes with the territory, you pointed out. And so the criticism is very warranted. Now can Lincoln find a happy medium where he is able to do these things that are required of him while also obviously spending most of his time on offense, which is, what he's brilliant at. And we have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, between quarterbacks and just offensive mind, I mean, I don't know if there's anyone better in college than Lincoln Riley, but again, he's asked to be more than an offensive mind.
No, without question. And I think you hit it on the head. Like, there's one thought, well, hey, if it, I think the thought that I would imagine some USC fans have is, well, hey, it's risky sticking with Lincoln Riley going to the Big Ten. It's risky that we get there and this thing happens again and we get off on the wrong foot. And on the other side of things, I'm like, well, the other risk is that you fire or don't have, and firing is obviously a premature conversation. The other risk would be not having arguably the greatest offensive mind and greatest quarterback whisperer / recruiter in college football as your head coach. Where do you fall on the thought around like how much leash someone like Lincoln Riley has? Because we're only in year 2. Last year was a 1-loss season in the regular season, and the kind of the postseason went how it went. This year, obviously, a massive disappointment for the good folks in LA. How much runway do we have here to kind of get things headed the right direction in your mind, Jake?
Well, I mean, so that's a great question. And look, I mean, let's take a larger landscape. Look at the landscape at USC. Mike Bone, who hired Lincoln, is no longer there. Jen Cohen now has come down from Washington. And, everything I'm hearing is that she runs a tight ship. And so, again, another 7-5 season with everything that they're trying to put into that football program is probably not going to be received really well. So, I don't have obviously a number that's like, oh, he's got 2 more years, 3 more, whatever that. But
sure. Yeah. To
be honest with you, I think more, and this is completely speculation. I have not heard anything, but I think more of the question should be, how long does Lincoln want to be in LA dealing with this stuff if he goes 7-5 again? Because I promise you, being around 2 head coaches at USC who struggled with, the full support of the fans, it gets really lonely really fast and really frustrating really fast. And you are left kind of looking around and seeing who's with you. And again, someone like Lincoln who could definitely just have a smooth sail somewhere else.
Totally.
I don't know if he wants the choppy waters in LA.
No, man, I think it's a totally valid point. Like, it'd be one thing if it was like, hey, man, this guy just, I don't know, can't hack it. I don't think anybody else is going to hire him to do anything else. You know, like he could go, you would imagine, have a job in the NFL as a coordinator or a quarterback's coach and not have to recruit anymore. And I don't know if that's something that would be appealing. But like you said, like it's a very interesting spot that we find ourselves in, even having this conversation. Jake, with you having played there, like you said, been under two different head coaches, in your mind, what is it that it is going to take to change philosophically, and obviously we're speculating here, philosophically to have the right guy at USC, whether that's Lincoln Riley, whether that's somebody else? Like, what does it take in your mind to be successful at a place like USC? Because tons of resources, tons of brand power. What does it take to win there?
Well, so I'll answer that just from first a coaching, philosophical, as you pointed out, answer, which is I really do think you need someone there who's going to challenge these LA guys and these SoCal guys, and both you and I played in SoCal. I'm still in SoCal, so I feel comfortable saying this about the people that I'm about to call out here. But LA guys and SoCal guys are not like Tuscaloosa guys or Georgia guys. You got to kind of whip them into shape a little more and find that dog in them. And so I think it's going to take someone to come in there and kind of bruise out the Hollywood glitz and glamour out of these guys. I don't think that competes well against Georgia and Alabama anymore. Now, from a more X's and O's standpoint, look, the Big Ten, I think, is a lot different than the Pac-12. I think week to week is going to be a lot easier. I think there's going to be less upsets. However, the thing that USC needs to absolutely figure out, and they're going to struggle in the Big Ten until they figure this out, is getting big boys on the offensive and defensive line. If they can do that, I say Ohio State has had success in the Big Ten now for how many years, right? Ohio State is the closest thing in the Big Ten to having the outside talent and skill position talent that USC has year in and year out. USC, I even think, is better than Ohio State on most years in that category and department, and they will continue to be that way. And so if USC can figure out that the two trenches, that will make them probably the top dog in the Big Ten in a matter of a year or 2 years or whatever it is, whenever they figure it out. They will run the Big Ten just like Ohio State has. The quarterbacks, wide receivers that USC can get, I think will trounce Ohio State on most years. So just watch out, because if USC can figure that out, the Big Ten's going to have a lot to deal with.
And that's the thing, too. Once USC gets rolling, like, there's just so much talent in the backyard. Like, I mean, Orange Lutheran, Mater Dei, Bosco, I mean, De La Salle's up the road. I mean, there's so much talent right in that, backyard for USC, to where if you can just give them a reason to stay and say, hey, if you come here, you will get drafted, we will win games, like it has been in the past. Like, USC's got, so much firepower to work with. Jake, it's Thanksgiving. A lot of huge games this weekend. Anyone specifically that you are watching with a little bit extra attention?
So what I think Jeff Fish is doing down in Arizona is really cool. That's a guy that I think obviously it'd be interesting to see someone like with that kind of culture and attitude come to USC if things don't end up working out. But what he's doing in Arizona is really cool. Oregon obviously is Oregon State. That will be a very tough game and probably one of the most exciting. It's a Civil War matchup, correct? That's what it's called?
Yeah.
So that's going to be one of the more interesting games probably we've seen between those two teams in a long time, if ever. And depending on that game, Arizona may go to the Pac-12 championship. And I'm just telling you right now, that's a team that Washington does not want to face. I'm just telling you right now, that's a team. Arizona's a team that Washington does not want to face in the Pac-12 championship. And
they played them close. To beat a team twice, Jake, whether it's Washington or Oregon, I think Arizona was the first team to really show, hey, there's some humanity here with Washington that you can't. I think they held Michael Penix Jr. I could be wrong on this. I think they held him to no touchdown passes the first time around they played, and they won. I think it was by one score. So that would be. I'm 100% with you. To see Arizona there after they've been expecting Oregon, that would be a shock to the senses, to say the very least.
I'm telling you, the Wildcats, man, they there's just teams that get rolling. There's teams that get rolling at the end of the year, and that team is firing on all cylinders, and they have all the confidence in the world that they could probably go to Vegas and win that game.
Hey man, I mean, hey, you've been to Vegas. You've been there for a Pac-12 championship yourself. You've been to a Rose Bowl. Like, again, dude's done it all. If you haven't already checked out Jake Olson on Twitter and listened to his story, like, dude's the man. Follow Jake Olson. Get dialed in here, friend of the show. Personal friend of mine. Jake, I appreciate you, man. I'm sure we're going to be talking throughout the day here, kind of getting our weights situated, if you will, before the clock strikes midnight tonight. But, dude, you're the man. I appreciate you so much, and I'm excited for USC to get things rolling here. It won't stay down. Programs like USC don't stay down. I firmly believe that, but I'm excited to see what they do here in the immediate future.
You have to throw my accolades. Another list. Another thing on my list of accolades, JD, is being on your show and On 3 here. That's a big deal now these days. So thank you, man. I appreciate
that, brother. You're the man. You're the man. Again, Jake Olson, the man, the myth, the legend. Check him out. Jake, happy Thanksgiving, brother. We'll do this again soon.
Right on, baby.
Again, huge shout out to that guy, Jake Olson, man. If you haven't yet given him a follow on the socials, definitely a tremendous idea to give him a follow. Again, one of my close friends, someone who I trust implicitly when it comes to college football as a whole, but especially USC. My guy's dialed in, so make sure you check out everything Jake's got going on over there on his social platforms. Okay, now, it's about that time. Our final thoughts for Rivalry Weekend. We've given you our predictions. We have some predictions now within those predictions when it comes to this upcoming slate. The first one, though, is just a prediction in general on what's going to happen in the Nebraska-Iowa game. I think Nebraska's going to win that football game. The line is weird. It started out favoring Iowa. Now it's back the other way favoring Nebraska. At last I checked, it was like up to 2.5 favoring the Cornhuskers. For Iowa, this is a very weird spot. You've already punched your ticket to the Big Ten title game, and Nebraska is playing at home with a Matt Rule coached operation with a chance to go to a bowl game. I'm just calling our shot right now. I think Chubba Purdy adds a little bit more of a dynamic element to that offense. I think he's a game plan breaker. As good as this Iowa defense is, it doesn't take much more than 3 scores to be able to win this football game, and one of those scores could end up being a field goal. So keep an eye on the under here. We may end up taking the under and maybe buy ourselves some Christmas presents for the kids a little bit early. Little cousins get some Christmas presents a little bit early on the Iowa under. Bottom line, we got Nebraska winning that football game. That's our prediction. We're calling our shot on these final thoughts on this Final Thought Thursday. That is Thanksgiving. Now, going forward now, let's move on to the game and our thoughts on that one. We already gave you our pick in it, gave you our prediction for it. I really think that for Michigan, this is the J.J. McCarthy game. It has to be. It has to be, because for Ohio State, they understand now the way that they've lost the last couple of seasons has been unacceptable. It has been a physicality from the offensive line of Michigan overpowering them up front in the trenches. It's been an attitude thing. It's been a toughness thing, quite frankly. And I'm not going to say that Ohio State's not a tough operation. I'm just saying the last couple of years, Michigan has been tougher. So I think the way that Ohio State approached this offseason, you would have to believe, was a tremendous focus and emphasis on being able to stop the run at will. I think that's the case, and I'm not saying they're going to totally take away the run game from Michigan, but I think we will see a point in time where Ohio State pushes Michigan into obvious passing situations, and J.J. McCarthy has to deliver. We said it during our prediction show. Ohio State, as they've been evolving defensively, Michigan's been trying to do the same thing offensively, trying to evolve and be able to be more multiple in how they can attack defenses. A big part of that, obviously, J.J. McCarthy pushing the ball downfield. So I think we see J.J. McCarthy, win or lose, I think we see him have a really solid performance through the air, and I think we end up leaving that game saying, all right, it wasn't a matter of Michigan being limited offensively in the pass game. That wasn't why they lost. It could be why they won. So we'll talk about that, obviously, on Sunday after we figure out what's going on in this game. Now, for Ohio State, when it comes to this whole conversation around Ryan Day, it's a lose-lose right now, and we've said that many times, as have other people. The fact that you don't have Jim Harbaugh on the sideline against Michigan, it's tough. Because if they are to beat Michigan, then there's kind of that afterthought of it wasn't Jim Harbaugh, so does it really count? And then if they lose to Michigan, it's Jim Harbaugh wasn't even on the sideline, and we lost to Michigan for the third year in a row. What is going on? I want to get out in front of the entire conversation, whether they win or lose. You have the right guy at Ohio State as your head coach. Ryan Day is 54-6 as a head coach. Really good. Goes without saying, that's really, really good. There's a thought that he's born on third base. It's one thing to get the keys to a really nice car. It's another thing to go out and win with it. They made the college football playoff last year. He put C.J. Stroud in the NFL. He's going to have another Marvin Harrison Jr., probably be a top 3 pick. They're developing talent. It's not like Ryan Day is just getting these tremendous ingredients and putting forward a subpar product. The reality is, the last couple of seasons, they have not shown up where they need to show up. Even if it happens a third time, you have the right guy at head coach. Who else would you go out and get if it's not Ryan Day running the show for you? Who else is more suited right now to lead Ohio State past Michigan than Ryan Day? So whether they do it or not, I just want to make sure we get out ahead of that and let you know there is proof in the pudding by the way that they beat Notre Dame, the way they beat Penn State. If they haven't arrived yet on the physicality front to beat Michigan, they're not far off. Like, I really think that if you played the Michigan-Ohio State game a couple of different times, let's say you played 100 times, I think you probably have a pretty even split down the middle by nature of how much they've developed this season. Now, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on Saturday if we still feel that way. But that's how we feel going into it. Ryan Day is not just resting on his laurels and saying, oh, whatever. We weren't tough enough, whatever. No, they've taken steps. So, again, Ryan Day is the right guy as your head coach at Ohio State, win or lose this Saturday. Florida State without Jordan Travis this weekend. Sunshine Showdown. You play Florida. You got Tate Rodemaker starting for you. I think this is the Trey Benson game. And not just because you don't have Jordan Travis. I think it's the Trey Benson game, even if you had Jordan Travis, because of what Florida doesn't do stopping the run. They're giving up right around 170 yards on the ground. For Florida State, we've asked for this for a while now. If you can run the football effectively, you will be able to even further unlock all the talent you have on the perimeter, because you can't worry about a team running the football and then have those freak show wide receivers on the outside. You got to give attention to one of them. If you want to do attention even across the board, they both hurt you. So for Trey Benson, this has to be the game. For Alex Atkins, that offensive line, this has to be the game where you just put your foot in the ground, draw a line in the sand, and say, you know what? This is who we are. It could be an ugly game. It could be a weird game with two backup quarterbacks. You're on the road. Like, I think this is the spot where you need to hunker down and run the football. And I also think for Trey Benson, he'll be able to hunker down and run the football. We've seen flashes at times, saw some good things in the Miami game. I think this is the game where Trey Benson really has a really solid showing and makes a point that, hey, I'm going to be the bell cow for us. So if you're a Florida State fan, clearly that's encouraging to see. Last final thought for you here. Heading into Rivalry Saturday, you got A&M going to LSU. A&M's obviously already fired Jimbo Fisher. LSU, they're not making the college football playoff. They're not going to play for an SEC title. But in this game, I'm predicting we get a Heisman moment from Jaden Daniels. Because we know what's at stake here. They're not getting that extra data point like we just talked about. They don't get to play during conference championship weekend. And so I don't think there's pressure so much, but I think there is an opportunity, and they thrive off that opportunity to allow Jaden Daniels to really cook against this A&M defense. And A&M's got a good defense. I'm just saying, I think he's going to put up a stat line that we can't possibly ignore that just kind of drops the mic on the whole conversation like, yeah, that's the Heisman Trophy winner. Now, Bo Nix may go have a great game against Washington should they end up playing them in the Pac-12 title game, and the same thing for Michael Penix Jr. if they end up playing Oregon. But, like, at the end of the day, I think Jaden Daniels has created enough momentum for his Heisman campaign that at this point in time, if he puts a punctuation mark on it on the last game of the season, I think there will kind of be a leave no doubt feeling that, hey, Jaden Daniels is the guy. He's the best player in college football. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not overthink this one and view it through the wrong framework of, well, best player on the best team. No. Number 5 for LSU is the best player in college football. He deserves the Heisman Trophy. He's having the best season. Let's drop the mic on this thing. So that's how we feel about it when it comes to our final thoughts for this rivalry weekend. Get at me on Twitter, get at me on Instagram, and let me know what y'all's final thoughts are, or y'all's predictions, rather, for this upcoming slate. We appreciate y'all so much for that. All right, now, let's move right into it. Got a couple of ad reads to get off our chest here for y'all. The good people bringing y'all some of the content today, bringing you the hard count. And we'll just keep a good thing rolling now. We're going to go ahead and start with our friends at Rhoback. Rhoback is bringing you the hard count today. And you guys all know how much I love Rhoback. I wear them all the time for a reason. I'm going to wear them probably after this show when I'm at Thanksgiving with my family. Throw on the hoodie because you can kind of dress it up, kind of dress it down. They have the best polos on the market. Like, you would be very, very okay wearing a polo to a tailgate from Rhoback or wearing a polo to Thanksgiving dinner from Rhoback. Like, they got you covered. Some nice fleeces, some performance crew necks. 2 things, they crush it on the comfort front and you just look good. So it's a good way to live. You got Rhoback going for you. They've also been proudly leading the new NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Cade Klubnik, Kyle McCord, big one this weekend, brother. Hopefully he's rocking some Roback. Nick Singleton, Jalen Milroe, maybe he's wearing some Roback in the hotel as he's getting ready for the Iron Bowl. Audric Estime. They've also teamed up with the legendary Coach O. So use code JD on Roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all performance polos, fleeces, joggers, shorts, whatever you want to get on Roback.com. Code JD will take care of you just in time now as we finish up the college football season and rivalry weekend. So we appreciate them we appreciate them for that, taking care of us, taking care of y'all. Just they get us as college football fans. All right, so get dialed in with Roback. A great way to also support the show, again, using code JD. All right, now, appreciate everybody dialed in on the podcast. Last ad read for you. Then I want to give a quick thank you message to y'all. Okay, so rivalry weekend is here. Some of y'all are probably back and forth on whether you want to go to the game or not. You're talking at Thanksgiving dinner. We could make it to the Iron Bowl. Maybe we do want to go to the Egg Bowl. Heck, if you're talking about going to the Egg Bowl right now, like, time is ticking. Best way to make sure you have tickets, if I'm trying to go to the Egg Bowl, is using Game Time. Because you can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. And they also have the best last-minute ticket deals. So you're going to be able to take advantage of the bang for your buck. You can get the best prices guaranteed. Game Time guarantee is that you will find if you do find a seat in the same section and row for less than what you're paying, Game Time, they credit you 110% of the difference. It's a great way to live, okay? They are obsessed with helping you save money. It's important these days, all right? It's important, especially holiday season, trying to use that money for some gift giving. Game Time, a great way to get that done. Also, know before you buy. Like, don't buy a ticket sitting behind the scoreboard so you miss half the game. Game Time, they'll give you a view of the seat before you buy. A great way to live. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to snag tickets without stress. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code HARDCOUNT for $20 off. That's important now. HARDCOUNT, HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, last time. Create an account, redeem code HARDCOUNT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. We said at the top of the show, but I want to say it again. We are so enormously so grateful for y'all tuning into the show. Whether you're listening on podcast, whether you're making time during your Thanksgiving to watch this show, or whether you're watching after the fact, after the stream, after the premiere, whatever, y'all are the ones that make this show go. Similar to college football, it's a supply and demand thing. Like, college football is special because of the people involved, because of the traditions, the fans, because of everything that goes into it on the outside in. Same thing with this show. Like, we are very privileged to have this platform and to do this show on a nearly daily basis and to do it live. But again, what makes it special is y'all being involved in it, y'all being a part of it. So before we get out of here, subscribe to the channel to be a part of it, like the video, all that. Like, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Happy Thanksgiving. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.